A pleasant day and a warm welcome to your favorite show, Law and Order. Ladies and gentlemen, we were discussing about numerous topics that gave you knowledge in order to succeed in this legal environment. So today also we are going to discuss some topics which regarding and it will be relating to the law of property. Simply, if we have a land, we are putting up a building. The landowner is the owner of the building, but with this development and industrialization, it has moved to a certain extent. So the owner of the land is another party and a building is put up and several people are living together, but they have several legal rights separate from the owner, right? So today we are going to discuss about condominium law, and to do the honors we do have Mr. Senaka the Saram, attorney at law. So thank you very much, sir, for having this discussion with us at Rupavahini. So sir, having a start off to our topic, simply what condominium law is?
Yes, now thank you for the invitation initially. Condominium law is, as you know, as you rightly said, it's relating to property law. So our country property law is based on Roman Dutch law. So the issue we had was when you put up a building on another's land, the building is acceding to the land and the property owner owns the building. So the issues we had was how do you segregate the building and sell it out to different parties and make sure that the ownership breaks in the building so that you can distribute it to others. A common mistake that happens in Sri Lanka is sometimes a parent will write a house saying the first floor to my eldest son, second floor to my second son, and there are people who write wills also like that. But when a notary goes to do a deed, you can't do it because the person who owns the land owns the two flats or whatever that is there on that. So to overcome that issue only we brought in the apartment ownership law.
So that is an importance with regard to this law. And so like with your explanation, what I wanted to know is that it's a separate question, but the people might be interested. So they might be having a land and they might also be willing to write that thing like the first floor to one son, the second floor to the daughter. If they want to divide that property equally among the children, what they can do?
Yes, now to do that, that's a very good question, because to do that you must make sure that your property is broken down into a condominium property. So you have to do a plan, and once you do the plan, you can register that plan before the CMA, and then there's a thing called a deed of declaration. What the deed of declaration does is it divides that property into 2 units or 3 units depending on what you are doing, and once you do that, then it's a separate unit. Then you can transfer the separate units to the people you want. Without doing that, you can't do that.
That means there is a legal possibility for that to be performed, but not in the ordinary manner.
Yes, not in the way that most people do.
Right. So when, so like for an example, I'm going to purchase a land and a house. Ordinarily, just if suppose that you have a land, so I'm coming to you and we are writing a deed and I'm just purchasing that, simply, that's it. But when it comes to a condominium property, we have to concern a bit, because as you said, like the land is a separate thing and the building is separate and a huge complex situation occurs. What are the things that a person who is trying to purchase a condominium property should consider?
Yes, now there are 2 types of condominiums. One is where you will go and purchase a condominium which is being constructed. The other will be where you already have a built-in building and you will buy a second-hand apartment. So if you are going for the first one, you have to be very careful these days of the developers. So you get very good developers, they keep to their word and they will do the needful. But there are a few bad eggs who have ruined this industry. Small timers who have come, they have taken money from people and they are not delivering on day. And as you know, there is a difficulty now when it comes to sourcing equipment, sourcing raw materials. So all this is coming into play. So if you are buying a second-hand one, no problem. Go and look at the location, look who is there. That is the most important thing that people forget. Look who is living in that building. If you don't gel with that sort of people, you can't live in that, because this is not an isolated house. You are living with so many others and you have to share common things and all that. For example, how the building is going to be maintained. If you are not going to spend, then all the others are also going to be affected. So things like that is a main factor. Look at who is in the building, see how it is maintained, walk around, go inside, go to your apartment, see whether there is moisture, all that. Look whether the building is maintained well, and if you're satisfied, only go ahead. Don't go into a building where it is badly maintained, because that means in time to come, your investment, your property is going to be very, very badly maintained. If you are doing the first one, check who the developers are. Look at reputed buildings. Don't touch any construction project unless you are fully satisfied with the developer. That is the first thing. Thereafter, look at the location and go ahead with the project.
That means nowadays we see some developers, they advertise prior to the construction, we have this number of units, you can reserve it early bird registrations, likewise certain things happen. So if we can assure the developers to a certain extent more than that we are satisfied, that is okay. But if not, if you are willing to buy a property, please satisfy all those requirements, because otherwise you'll get in trouble in the future. And so when it comes to that developers, and suppose that we are satisfied, although it is a developing property, I'm satisfied with the developer, so I'm going to buy that condominium property or a separate unit. I have a trouble in finance. How does the bank loan or the finance with regard to that thing apply?
Yeah, so that is not an issue, because what happens is you can go to a bank and they will work out, there is a thing called a tripartite agreement, where they will enter into agreement with you, the developer and the bank. Right. So the loan is given, and on tranches the bank will transfer the money to the developer, and moment this building is done and the apartment is ready, after the condominium plan is registered, they will mortgage that property, and once you settle the loan, they will release the property. So that's not a big issue. Right. So it's happening now, and a lot of banks accommodate that.
Right. So we can obtain a loan from the bank under a tri-party agreement, and once it is settled, the what do you call, the title or the ownership vested with ourselves without any hassle. Yes. And sir, for that particular loan, some people say, like the developer, for an example, ABCD is a company, so they are a developer, and so they put up a property and selling that particular units. I'm a person who is going to buy, and I've just coordinated with the bank to have a loan, so they have granted, so I'm going to pay to the bank or to the developer. Are there any two different instances?
It can work both ways. For example, you can make that upfront payment by yourself. For example, the developer wants an upfront payment, so then you can make the upfront payment, and then for the balance amount you can take the loan from the bank. It all depends on how much financing you have, and how much financing the banks are willing to give. I know for a fact certain banks are very, very reserved now in giving loans for apartments, because they are a bit worried of what's happening. So they may not give you the full exposure. They might say, okay, we'll give you only 30%, 40%. Earlier they used to go more than that. So it all depends on your negotiating power and how much money you have. With the current interest rates, I don't advise anybody to go ahead for a full loan, because the current interest rates are crazy. I mean, you all know that. You can't pay that money. So it's all about how you manage your finances and how the bank will accommodate you.
Right. And sir, the other situation, if the developer requests us to pay money to them, and they will settle the blank loan, and like we are just doing that in the formal procedure that they have negotiated, for an example, 1-2 years or a certain time period, and we have to check, I just feel the necessity to check whether the loans are settled properly. Can we move?
That is, you're talking of not the personal loan that the person who has taken to buy.
Yes.
This is the developer's loan. So to put it in perspective, that is, when these projects are started, the developer will mortgage the original land, and then only he will start this project with the building coming on. So there is an issue, because a lot of people don't look at this. So what I always tell in these programs where I go and speak about this subject is, you can't handle this on your own. It is complex legal issues, agreements, and things that you will not know. First thing is, if you are going to buy an apartment, it will be advisable for you to go and meet a lawyer. Not that I am trying to promote lawyers, but you are otherwise going to fall into trouble. So to answer your question now, things like this, what you are asking, a layman will not know. So
Yes.
you have to go to the land registry, see whether the developer has done a mortgage on the main property, because that mortgage applies to your unit if he doesn't settle the loan. Now there are developers who have fallen into trouble. They have given occupation to people. You are living there. Some have issued a deed also, but it's still subject to that mortgage. So when you are buying the apartment, you have to make sure that that mortgage does not apply to your unit. And that is how you have to go to that bank, speak with the developer, and the bank gives a thing like a deed of release, where they will say, on this unit, we will not have any mortgage rights. So if that has not happened, then though you are sitting pretty inside that apartment, your apartment is also subject to the main mortgage. And if the developer defaults, which is sometimes happening, then the bank exercises parate or exercises their mortgage rights on your unit as well. So you have to be very careful, and I'm telling you, you can't do that on your own. You'll have to have somebody with some expertise to go to the land registry and check what has happened, because these are bulky documents, and if you miss it, even I must say, even our colleagues miss it. I mean, competent people also miss it. So a layman can't do this. It's always good. You're spending a lot of money on an apartment. It's always good to spend a little bit. Sometimes people say, penny wise, pound foolish.
Yes.
So don't be like that. Don't think that, this lawyer is a nuisance. We are just paying money for him. At the end of the day, you will be content. You can sleep in the apartment you're living in. Because I have had numerous clients. They have bought, and then they have problems later because they have not checked what the developers have been.
Right. I mean, like that explanation, what the question I asked was that from the ordinary point of view, that means you might ask the same question. So in that scenario, what we should do is that it's not paying the owner or the developer and he is going to settle the loan, but you should fully content about the particular way that they have proceeded. So it's better to have a legal consultation and to guidance and to have some sort of a guidance with a lawyer. So proceed that thing, and because if there is a will, there is a lawsuit. So you can proceed with a lawyer. It's not like, as we said, it's not promoting lawyers, but these programs are conducted like it's designed not to let you in trouble, as I always say. So you should know about the infrastructure, you should know about the environment, and that will help you to proceed successfully in this manner. And so like when it comes to apartments, like the loans, finance, and checking all those things, buying that thing, we concluded. So suppose that we are living inside. Maintenance, administration, security, those types of numerous disciplines are done by the developer, or how it is done? What is your relation?
Now that's a very good question. Those of you who are living in apartments, you all have a thing called the management corporation. You all have a committee. But what is happening, unfortunately, in Sri Lanka is the people decide how much they are going to contribute towards the maintenance of this building. And as you know, people don't like to pay.
Yes.
They don't want to spend. And there is a different mindset also. Some of these people have come from a house to apartment. So they think, why should we contribute towards this management?
It's like paying a rent monthly.
Yeah. So this is the death nail to our apartment industry, because no maintenance. If you see some of the properties in Colombo, even after 20 years, they are well maintained. People still like to come and buy there. So if you are living in apartment, you have to make sure that the building is maintained. If you are living near the coast, it is very important that you paint the buildings, make sure it doesn't corrode, because at the end of the day, this is your house, your investment. If you don't maintain it, it will be like a shack and nobody will look at it. You won't be able to even sell it. At the end of the day, all the money you put into that apartment, forget about the way you live. You won't be able to sell this, nobody will come there, and at the end of the day, you will have to have a massive repair one day if something happens to this building. For example, if you go near the coast, you see some of the main beams have cracked. That is because they have not painted, they have not maintained, and it has corroded, the steel inside has corroded, and now there is a big issue where you will have to do a massive repair. That has nothing to do with the fault of the developer. Developer has handed over and given it to you. 10-15 years down, you have not maintained it, and then you try to blame it on the developer.
Right. Okay. So then when it comes to that particular development strategies, you said that the management corporation is there and people, they have to donate a certain amount of money to that entity. And what are the benefits of those things? It's apart from the management thing. If a disaster comes or if there is a certain collective thing that they should perform, are there any support from that?
Yes, because good question. Because it's mandatory that you insure the building.
Right.
Most people don't do that even. So, I mean, the collection of money you get from these owners is not going to be sufficient if this building collapses. That is why the law provides that you have to insure the building. But unfortunately, other than good buildings, there are a whole load of buildings in Sri Lanka where they don't insure the building. So, one thing is you collect the money and you pay the insurance premium, and then the building is covered. If the insurer doesn't cover certain things, then you have money. There's a thing called a sinking fund.
Right.
The sinking fund is a contribution you do every year. And with the age, the beauty of it is, with the age of the building, your sinking fund has grown because every year you're contributing. So these things are not happening. That is why if you see in Colombo, you see some ghastly sights now.
Yes.
And it's going to get worse because cost of maintenance is going high. People are not contributing, people are not maintaining, and this is not going to look good if you are living in one of those apartments.
Right. Okay. So, neighborhood and the environment should be fine. At the onset of the discussion, guest spoke about that. You might have wondered, if we are buying that particular unit, if we are isolated within several walls, why should we consider about the neighborhood? Maintenance, security, and all the other things are managed by the developer. That's what we should consider. If you are not contributing, even you might be contributing, but the other people, they are not contributing to their fullest extent. They are not willing to pay, and you'll be in trouble because the entire unit, you can simply understand, a single land, all the people have contributed together, the one building put up, you will have divided. It's like sharing something. There should be a separate legal form and a particular understanding to do. So that environment matters, neighborhood matters. You should consider all those things. And so when it comes to those management entities and corporations, the funds that they have donated, that's all fine. And for an example, you said that the building is cracked. For example, even if it is well maintained, after about 20, 30 or 40 or 50 or something like that, we have to have a massive repair. At that moment, for an example, if we have to repair our house, we'll just repair room by room or something like that, or shift to another place and repair this entire house. But in an apartment, in a condominium thing, how can we perform that?
Yes, first thing is you have to get an engineer's report. So there are reputed companies that do this. You can't just go and do a patch-up job in this,
Right.
because it's not like a house, as you said. It affects everybody, and whatever you do, it has to be a long-term solution. So you have to get the experts involved, get the reports from them, and perform the task as they say. Don't go to do these patch-up jobs, because they are only going to just procrastinate the problem you have. They are not going to shorten the problem you have. And remember, if you have a problem like that, you have to nip it in the bud. Don't wait till it aggravates and the situation becomes worse. Quickly attend to it. If you don't have money, if your insurance doesn't cover, collect the money from the owners and proceed to it quickly. Don't neglect the building, because if you neglect the building, you will all suffer at the end of the day.
Right. Okay. So when it comes to that environment and that legal entity, it's all good. Like, we can consider all those things and we can repair that particular thing with an engineer's report or something like that. do have a question. So the developer is responsible for those developments and we have contributed to the fullest extent, but I don't have a place to live. So with that, all the people should move out of the apartment. Will they give a new place for us to live?
No, because the developer gives a defects liability period, and the big issues you talk about happens maybe after 5-6 years.
Right.
For example, there are leaks or cracks, and all this happens after 5-6 years, or maybe 10 years. Then the defects liability period is over. So it's up to you. Once the developer hands over and your defects liability period is done and dusted, it's your baby. It is your baby, how you manage it, how you handle yourselves. So as you said, if you have to move out, then that is because of your own negligence. If you maintained it well, you won't have had to do that. And some of us will have only one house, one apartment. Where are we going to move? So then you will be paying rent. So you might as well spend well and maintain that building rather than wait for the situation that you're talking of.
Right.
Spend on rent, spend on the building, spend on other professionals, and make a mess out of the whole thing. So my advice to all people living in condominiums, please contribute that management contribution, make sure a proper committee handles it. Sometimes they just get a retired person who is there, he is managing it, they are putting money into his personal bank account. You don't do things like that, because that management corporation is a separate legal entity, it has its own bank account. Audit the funds, have your annual general meetings, have your meetings with the owners, and maintain this building. Otherwise it's going to be a disaster, and you will definitely see a disaster in Colombo very soon, the way things are progressing.
Right. Okay. So, and so, like apart from those management entities, and suppose that there are certain rules and regulations that we need to follow as people living in that particular unit. So at the onset, at the moment of your purchasing, we just read and go through them, and later on the administrative people, they enforce new laws, suggest that even like there is no any vote from the people who are living, they just impose new laws. Can they do?
No, I'll just backtrack to your question. This home rules is a very important thing when you're buying an apartment. Every apartment unit has their own home rules. So you have to make sure you know them before you buy and occupy. A good example is, I had a very rich client. He was living outstation and he had 2 big dogs, and he had bought a very big apartment in a complex, and when he walked in with those dogs, the security said, "Mate balu ganiyanna ba." So he was not aware. So when you are a lawyer or somebody trying to buy, please look at these home rules. So if you can't violate the home rules, because there is a system in place there. The next question that I'm going to answer is the question you asked. Can they change it? No, they can't. So the rules that are there passed at the AGM will prevail. If there are no rules, the second schedule in the Act is the rules. But generally people have developed on it, and they have put it to a AGM, and once they put it for the AGM and pass it at the AGM, even though you are not there at the AGM, it will bind you as well. So if you are not, they will circulate it before. If you are not happy with it, you better go to the AGM and voice your concern. Otherwise, once it's passed.
Right. So the annual general meetings and those particular properly handled meetings, they will pass the rules, and they can amend it or newly introduce it without any regulation. They can't impose. And the most important thing is that we have to be aware about the already imposed rules. We can't violate the home rules. So if we want to lead a satisfactory life that we are intending, that should go in line with the home rules and the rules that they have already imposed. We can't negotiate them. We can't change them. We can't go out of those bounds. So we have to live within the limits, and if a newly introduced thing is something a hassle for you all, you can raise your voice at the AGM, but once it is passed, it's passed. And so, like for example, if we are troubling, or we have a trouble, or any management that the developers, they have filed a case, or they have they are going to move with a certain step to not to do this, like a preventive step from our side. If they have not informed us, can we take actions, or can we defend it that they have not informed the particular thing to us?
Yes, because if they have not, you are referring to the rules.
Yes.
Yeah, so if they have not passed it properly at the AGM, you can definitely challenge it, because generally all these things are done with the concurrence of everybody. The developer will have the first rules in place, as you said.
Yes.
That is not subject to a AGM. They will put it sometimes in your sale and purchase agreement.
Right.
They have an annexure to that. These are the rules. So that is not negotiable. But once you take over the building as owners, you can change the rules, but there are certain good norms that you can't change. That is there in the Act. You can't change those. You can add on.
Right.
But you can't change the things that are there in the Act.
Right. Okay. So then we discussed about many numerous disciplines and certain aspects, this ordinary manner, not moving deeper to the law, but the general things that you must understand when it comes to this purchasing of condominium property. And so final question, if I want to resell it, as we are buying a second hand apartment, what is the formal procedure that we need to follow in reselling that thing?
So if you are a seller, it doesn't really matter, because you need to only find the purchaser. But if you are the purchaser, you have to be looking at certain things. As I told you, first thing, go and look in this building how it's maintained. If it's not maintained, please don't touch it. Check who is living in these places. Check whether there is a mortgage on that property. So you need an expert to do that, a lawyer. Then check whether the management corporation fees, all these have been paid. Otherwise, you will buy and then you will have to pay them.
Right.
Then also look at the state of how the committee is functioning. So you have to do your background checks. Otherwise, you will end up in an apartment where you will be having a very unpleasant stay, and there is nothing you can do about it.
Yes. Right. Okay. So we had a fruitful discussion about condominium law and purchasing them, reselling them, and the issues that we are facing, how those things are managed, and the frequent troubles that we encounter. And we have advised you all to let a proper procedure flow and aware about the law, so you will not let in trouble in your future proceedings if you are going to buy a condominium property. So thank you very much, sir, Mr. Saram, attorney at law, for joining with us with today's discussion, and hope you had an interesting time with having a fruitful discussion about the condominium law. So stay tuned with the rest of the programs, and tuned with ChannelEye for more programs, and we'll be discussing one of the most important topic in the next week as well. Thank you very much.